Why can't you square the circle? It's like trying to put a square peg in a round hole. Hello everybody, welcome back to From Rhythm to Algorithm. Hope everyone's doing well, we're back in the park. And so I want you to think about that, right? People will say, there's a common phrase, right? You can't square the circle, meaning something doesn't make sense. But they're alluding to geometry, right? And so the reciprocal to that, today we're talking about reciprocity and a lot of other things. But think about what I said, right? If you can't square the circle, it's like putting a square peg in a round hole. It's literally logically opposite. And they're both common phrases or common things said. You know, one is towards, you can't square the circle, is like kind of like doesn't make logical sense, and then you can't put a round peg in a square hole. Typically comes from a sexual connotation, but it is logically opposite. So now what I told you is like we're connecting these cliches, but we've just done so. And they're reciprocal, right? It's just think about it. They're reciprocal logical statements. But we'll get to that in a second. I just thought that was a good opener. We'll see how it comes out on the editing. But what is the relationship of identity and categorization? Where we finished last time, sensorality categorizes. Sensorality is categorical, right? If you say categorically speaking, you're saying all-encompassing, or more specifically, carte blanche. Right? There's another connection of things. If people say carte blanche, a phrase from French, literally means white cart. That means, you know, do anything you want. They have full reign, all encompassing. If you say, I'm going to take Johnny's candy categorically, you're taking all of Johnny's candy. So now we've connected again, two logical things, right? Can't put a square hole or a square peg in a round hole is the reciprocal to you can't square the circle. And then categorical is carte blanche. True, logically consistent. Because remember, languages aren't distinct. Obviously, you still speak French or German or Spanish or Russian or Ukrainian or Romanian or whatever. But at the core, what is the most fundamental is the syllables. And so, gorality, what is gore? Gore is brutal. Gore is, trying to think of another operative word, but what is gore? How does categoricality limit? What do categories limit? Inclusivity, exclusivity, but a limit is a bound. And now we've described our physical bounds. Again, that's where we get all of our boundaries. The concept of a limit is derivative from boundary, which is our physical contact points. I'm represented by our tension path. But today's mostly geometry and logic. Spatiality, speciality. Right, so now we're showing you, you've never heard speciality unless you've seen my derivation before. But speciality is again the general form of any time you say something is special, but spatial, right? So we're talking about this, we haven't defined space. We've defined our tension path. Me touching my notebook, touching the chair, touching the ground, touching the camera, that's the tension path. The tension points where the contact happens, they're not actually touching. But we've connected spatial, and not special, but spatial, because the pronunciation matters, to spatial. So what is spatiality? Spatial, space. What is space? Space is distance. Distance, right now we can chop off that prefix, which is clearly that died to the stability of 2, and then we have space and stance, right? So a stance is a position. Right? If I have a stance on a political issue or a religious topic or historical conundrum, right, that's a stance. And so now you have space is distance, space is related to stance. But what is the relationship of position in space? Right? If there's 1 meter between me and my camera, that's a distance, and that's how much space there is. So what's the relationship between space and distance? And now getting back to, because remember we derived this theorem, there is no unique opposite to a center, right? If you have a center and you're on a circle, you can have, you know, these different points. And none of them are uniquely opposite of the center. They're all equally as opposite. Just again, different ways of saying the same logical truth. But the opposite of a center is a corner, right? So now think of that square, you can't square the circle. And so why do we have the image, I'll put it on the screen, but you have a circle inscribed in a square. And so that is the geometric picture. The correct geometric picture is where that phrase comes from. So if you have a circle with a radius 1, the unit circle, And you have that inscribed, and they have the square and the circle have the same exact center point, and that radius of 1, well, the length side of the square is going to be 2. So you're always going to have an area of the square bigger than the area of the circle, right? Area of the circle, pi r squared, area of the square, length squared. Now here's an interesting thing. Why did I say length? Why not width or height? Why do we say distance is length and we do? Why? But now we have a geometric proof and a geometric mapping of infinitesimality, right? So now if we take that unit circle and say, well, that's an electron, right? That's the smallest thing we can interact with. We call an electron a point particle. In reality, there is internal dynamic, but for all intended purposes, it's fine to say that it's a point particle. Because remember, we're building out the logic. We're proving some things wrong, but we're building out other things. And all of the major problems we've proven in the direction everyone expected them to be proven. But that infinitesimality now has a physical analogy, physical geometric analogy. If you have an electron, that radius of an electron, and there is one, but that distance between the difference in the volume of the electron inscribed in a cube, that is infinitesimality physically, because you can't measure it. It's immeasurable. Infinitesimality is immeasurable. That is why when you integrate over an infinitesimal. It's because you add up all of those little spaces. And so very, very poignant on that one. But even more to me is like why when I literally just said, revisiting the most basic things of geometry, when I write the area of a square or the area of a rectangle and I say length, why did I say length, not width or height? Why? But that is, again, that picture is where that phrasing comes from, and it's really derivative of the theorem that a center does not have a distinct opposite, but a corner is the opposite of a center. But corners, right, circles don't have corners. And so it's really referencing that. And then the completion to that complete resolution is the phrase, you can't put a square peg in a round hole, because you can't square the circle. It's just that reference frame. You can literally feel it. If you just think about that logic, it's a really cool result. But why did we say length, not width or height? Sensorality is tangentiality. Why are tangents significant? Why do we have these things? Okay, now what's the difference between a tangent line and a normal line, right? Normal, and if you just said it without context, not in math, because we're doing a lot of geometry today, but if you just said you're normal, you're doing what everyone else is doing. But if you're a normal line, you're perpendicular to a curve. If you're a tangent line, you're perpendicular, you only touch at one place. So what is the relationship between a normal line and a tangent line? Why do they emerge differently in mathematics? Like what is the context? Because it's the same thing, but it's clearly emerged differently. And then there's also that other numeric result where if you flip the slope of the tangent, you get the normal line or something. You get what I'm saying, close enough. It's all stemming from the same physical reality. But what is the relationship of a tangent and a normal line, as is stated in mathematics today, is not well defined. Tangency is adjacency, right? If you're in normal conversation and you go off on a tangent, what are you doing? Well, first of all, you're hearing a logical tension point that causes you to think of a different subject, so you change the subject. So you go off on a tangent, but you had that one point of connection. And so right, so it's adjacent. But now then I can say adjacency is parallel, right? If it's close to something, if it's related, it's parallel. But very clearly, mathematically, parallel lines aren't tangent lines, right? Parallel lines never intersect. So what we can break down that logic with a lot of nuance, tangency to adjacency makes sense. Adjacency to parallel makes sense, but parallel to tangent definitely doesn't make sense. So that was a cool thing. What is adjacency? Adjacency is proximal. It is close. It's near. Parallel can be near or far. Tangent connects only at one place. So again, all of these words in a strict mathematical geometric sense have not been differentiated. So we talked about a lot about categories. The geometric stuff today was really cool. But category, allegory. Sensorality is allegorical. Categorical, allegorical. And what is an allegory? An allegory is a story. Story, sorry, sensory. So we're connecting this. We point out basic geometrics, and again, it's so simple to say just the intro, but that is a huge logical connection, massive. Again, the reciprocity of you can't square the circle is already out there. Again, like I'm saying, the solutions, the initial conditions and the solutions of logical resolutions are already out there. You just have to put them together. And we have infinite axioms, so there's infinitely many times you can do this. But an allegory is a story. Sorality is storality, right? If you store something, you're sorating it. Sensorality stores memory. Now that's our functional definition up until this point. And as you can see, the functional definitions change, but that's what we're doing, is we're getting to the axiomatized final form of it. And we have to work backwards through all of this logic. But sensorality stores memory. What's the purpose of life? To memorize, not to memorize, but working memory. So then what's the difference between working memory and crystalline memory, right? RAM versus your hard drive, so to speak. And obviously RAM, random access memory, is a lot more valuable for life itself as opposed to computers, right? That's why we have hard drives. You can store something. If you want to look up who was the King of England in 1432, you can go look it up. But sensorality is shopality, right? Store, shop is what we've connected, right? A store is a shop. Sensorality is shopality. Sorality, shapes. Shape, ship, store. Shape fits. If something is fitting on you, it accents or accentuates your shape. That dress looks good on her. It's fitting. It fits her. It's shapely. Sensorality is shapely. Sensorality is sharply. And so again, for whatever reason, speciality, right? Special is an adjective, right? So we're getting to, like, for, again, what form of a word, because we can use sensorality in a noun, verb, adverb, adjective, all of these different forms of words that we already know. And it's like the adverb, or again, what form of the word is the axiomatizing one. We already have an example with speciality. I could literally look it up in my email, and I'm literally not going to. And it doesn't help or hurt this new derivation. It's just like if I have an itch to scratch, I'm going to scratch the itch. I'm not going to go walk across the park or something. And this synesthesia, like I'm always drawn to the next big movement. Because the details get ironed out anyway. And I've already done it in a complete proof. So again, like I said, I've demonstrated all of these properties in a proof, in the highest capacity you could, to show you how these things function. But sensorality is sharply. So what is the basis of linguistics? Right, we talked about the difference, the hierarchy of derivation from the physical empirical world through the concept of logic, then through language, then through linguistics, then through mathematics. So now, again, remember, in speciality, because again, I'm addressing people that already know who I am, and then the random YouTuber that sees this video at the same time, even though no one really watches my shit besides the people that already know. But I still like to include everyone in Brad's classroom. But what the fuck is going on? I don't know. But if you look at the words linguistics, right? Like, what is the base of the word linguistics? Very clearly, the word mathematics is based on theme, right? Category is theme. I did a short video. You can go watch that connection if you like. It's hilarious. I'm putting things that would genuinely be like PhDs or Fields medals as like YouTube shorts to try to draw attention to my long form videos with like 10 more proofs, and it's still not, it doesn't wrangle anybody's attention. But what is the basis of linguistics? Like, clearly physically it's sound. You can't have language without sound. Well, you can, but logical structure would still be consistent outside of vocalized sound. So a language, again, is more general than just sound. But the basis of linguistics is logic. And so, but literally the base of linguistics is guise, right? You have a disguise, speciality disguises, sensorality guises. Right? So again, we have these, we've shown it a bunch, but these negative definitions, right? A disguise is a costume. It masks your natural appearance. So what's the, now we double negate that. What's not a disguise, right? It's just a guise. You take off that prefix. So what's a guise? It's just your normal appearance, right? Your normal character, normal personality. I don't know. Again, just progressing the logic. At this point, like I said, I very rarely reference sensorality, S or C, or speciality, because again, they're forms of words. Those are variables. And we're going to show how all of those syllables disappear or connect directly to other words. And we were so far developed in this proof. Like I said, this is torture. My name is Bradley Boas, Article 1, Section 8, Subsection 8, guarantees me, and I can't even take the United States Constitution as anything really legitimate to any extent. To all of those people that served in the Army, you served nothing. As I've covered, I've personally negotiated the most important truths in the history of Earth. So you can wear your uniforms and go, high school never ends. And I don't care, nationalism to me is pure high school. But that is where we're at. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. And this does end. Like I'm saying, definitions are definite. It's not like I'm going to have this amount of proofing to do every day, all day for a while. Very literally, provably, you can see that big gap of like 3 years from when I started from rhythm to algorithm to when I can build enough linguistics to derive all of these things. It takes literal years. So if people don't decide to treat me like a human being by the time this one's over, I just, my life's over. Like, I'm a slave, and I'm not enjoying it. It sucks. I hate every minute of my day. There was nothing wrong with me. I was just born into a society that literally can't accept science. This is a time, today, right now, whoever's watching this video, you are more scientifically illiterate than anyone in Galileo's time, or in Newton's time, or Aristotle, or anybody else in history. You people are the most profound science deniers ever. But you have your big fancy buildings, and you have a bunch, one to the right, everyone jerk each other off and give each other Fields medals and Nobel Prizes and then compete over nothing. And then it's like, hey guys, why do we say you can't square the circle? Oh, well, Brad beat you to it again. Haha, stinkeroonios. You guys have never done real research in your life. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.